The anti-tank class is arguably one of the more enjoyable classes to play. I mean, who doesn't want to blow crap up? This class brings a lot to the table, especially for squad firepower and just in general being able to cause destruction and mayhem. This class is specifically built to pick up the slack when your tank crews falter, as your job is to mostly, as the name suggests, destroy tanks. And you have many weapons in your arsenal as you level up this class. So today we're going to talk about how to play anti-tank right. Now, depending on what country you're playing, you have up to 3 if not 4 classes, depending on what country you are. Now, if you're starting out, you'll have the rocket launcher for the US and the Germans, while you have the anti-tank rifle for the Soviets. Once you get to the second class, you'll be able to build an anti-tank gun for all 3 nations. Thirdly, you will have the satchel charge and mines that you can lay. And then fourth, as of the Kharkov update, you will have a rocket launcher for the Soviets. But you need to be level 8 to use this, so this will be a bit of a grind. We'll start off talking about rocket launchers, since if you've never touched this class or you've only used this class very little, it'll be your default anti-tank weapon. And also, you'll find that a lot of people use these since this is a decent ranged option. The rocket launcher does decently well at its job, and it's good for engaging tanks at range. But, unfortunately, it does have some limitations. The big one being you only have 2 rockets, so you have to make your shots count. And unfortunately, the only way you can get more is if you either respawn, go and find a explosive ammo box, or you find a ammo drop that the commander can call in. The only way you can get more ammo. Which kind of leads me to my second point, making those shots count. Now, here's what you need to take out every single vehicle. For trucks, both supply and transport trucks and half-tracks, it's a one-shot if you hit the front or like where the engine would be. For recon tanks, it is also a one-shot, providing you hit the hull and not the turret. For other tanks, such as the light and medium, you'll need at least 2 rocket shots if the tanks are full health. And for heavies, such as, Panthers, Tigers, E8s, E2, Jumbo Shermans, IS-1s, you'll need at least 3 shots. So you'll need to either find an ammo box or redeploy and get more rockets to kill these heavy tanks. So it's very important to be careful with your shots. And unfortunately, you need to make sure they're well aimed as well, hopefully getting behind the tank, as that's your best bet. However, even getting behind them doesn't guarantee a penetration, as you'll see on screen now. That's the back of a light tank, and I just bounced off the back. You can hit the tanks at very weird angles, and the rocket won't go through, even if you're hitting from the back. So keep that in mind. However, there's one cool thing I'd have to say about the rocket launchers. They are great garrison killers. Rockets can kill garrisons at range, so you don't have to go up and kill them, especially if they're behind the lines where they take longer to destroy. So instead of going up and risking your life for it, you can plant a rocket into it and destroy it. Now, be forewarned, if this is a default garrison, the ones that come up on offensive mode, and you are attacking a default garrison that has already been placed with the 10-second spawn timer, you will not kill it with a rocket. Those ones have to be destroyed manually, unfortunately. But that just gives another element that the rocket can use. They're good at taking down tanks with some limitations of ammo and true damage, but they are good for ease of use and mobility's sake. So that'll be your number 1 option. Now, if you're unfortunate to play the Russians and you're very low level, you're stuck with the AT rifle. And this thing, it's mobile, I'll give it that, and it's not bad, and it's very stealthy in its own right compared to the rocket launcher, but you need a lot of shots to kill some vehicles, and it just takes forever. I'm not going to waste too much time on this thing. You have more chance of getting more kills with an AT gun than the AT rifle. Now let's even count 1, 2, 3. Oh, hold on, gotta reload. Let's just go through it. Yeah, hold on. And 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you get the point. This thing takes forever to kill something with. And keep in mind with the footage I'm showing you, I'm shooting stationary targets for the most part. I'm not shooting moving targets, and I'm not really getting shot at. I literally went all the way to the enemy headquarters to get the gameplay for this, so I'd be uninterrupted. I mean, it takes forever, don't get me wrong. It's, again, you can deploy it anywhere, it's mobile, and you can refill it using regular ammo boxes. But after that, the positives kind of end. You get 5 shots per clip? Yeah, per clip. And it just, again, takes forever, and I would not necessarily probably be able to do this unless I am completely alone on the battlefield and behind them to where there's no infantry support and so on. And as you're watching now, this is a medium tank, and I still haven't killed it yet. So yeah, that's the AT rifle. The anti-tank gun is basically a stationary tank cannon that can be used to engage enemy tanks, but it is very fragile. Doesn't exactly have armor like a tank. But this thing can be used to engage all types of armor. Now, this thing would best be described as high penetration but low damage. Meaning the way I talk about this is you can go up against heavy tanks with this cannon, regardless if its front armor is showing. Now, unless the tank is super angled and you have random ricochet shots, chances are you're going to go through the front armor of certain tanks. Minus things like the gun mantlet, where that's the most armor on a tank. This thing, if you have a 2-man crew, one being the gunner, one being the loader, you can rack off shots very quickly. And even though the damage is less than a bazooka shot, the rate of fire you can have with this thing is very good. So it makes up for its lack of damage, in my opinion. Now, there are some downsides with this tank cannon. Biggest one being its lack of mobility. You can't move it forward or backwards, and turning it left to right is very slow, especially if you are a 1-man crew. If you have a 2-man, you can turn it left to right a little faster, but that only goes so far. And as the gunner, you can only turn the gun so much to the left or right, where the loader / gun turner would have to turn it mostly by themselves while you aim the gun. A second would be its costs in 2 ways. So the anti-tank cannon needs 50 supplies to build. And now if you have a good support player like I had in this clip, you can get that very easily. But if you don't, getting an anti-tank gun is very hard, or at least one in a good position. This one, I found a decent upraised position to overlook the previous objective, which is where I ambushed those 2 tanks. But you're not always going to have that. So getting supplies can be very hard. And it costs, in this case, the second cost in munitions. It costs 5 munitions per shot from the anti-tank cannon, which means you're taking from the commander's supply to bring in airstrikes, supply, and everything like that. So it's best used that you try to use those shots carefully if your munitions are kind of on the low side. But you are an effective anti-tank gun, so it should be okay, as long as you're landing your shots. This goes to show, though, try to use this on strictly vehicles and not infantry. The anti-tank gun does not have high explosive shells. It strictly has anti-tank shells, so using them against infantry is unadvisable. So keep that in mind when using the AT gun. But I advise using the AT gun when you got long fields and long run at the sight. This last class takes a long time to get, but I'd argue it's worth every second of it. The Satchel Charge Mines class adds a whole new dynamic to the AT class. First, you get the Satchel Charge, which regardless of armor, as long as the Satchel Charge is on the tank itself, will blow it up. Once you put it on, as long as it's not diffused, you can destroy any vehicle in the game. And that says a lot in itself. The other thing with the Satchel Charge that it's really good for is taking out structures, which is very underutilized in that role. Satchel Charges can be used to destroy pillboxes, barbed wire, and so on, clearing the way for both tanks and allied infantry alike, which would be nice to be used more. The only problem is you got to be careful about friendly fire. That's when you have to be careful when it's used. Other than that, the only 2 not positive things I could say is you just have to get up close and personal, and you only get 1 explosive. Other than that, there's not much really wrong with the satchel itself. The other cool thing though with the satchel is you can set to different time settings, such as 30, 60, and 120. Maybe the tank you strap it onto rolls into a bunch of infantry or the enemy objective. I personally keep it at 30. I like to see things blow up quickly, not later when maybe I die. Another decent weapon in your arsenal is the anti-tank mines, and you get 4 of them. You can use them one of 2 ways to decent effect. One, you could get behind enemy objectives and mine important roads that lead to objectives, such as what I'm about to do shortly. Or if you're on more of a defensive stance, you can use these to mine off roads that the enemy are most likely to come by. But in this example here, I'm going to place some mines on the main road and use the landscape, as the landscape sometimes are more favorable to you to place mines, since the mines unfortunately will sit pretty high on the ground. So it's important when you use the mines to hide them in grass or see if you can sink them lower into the ground. But these are very effective at derailing trucks and lighter armor vehicles as well, or at least slowing them down as they might notice them. You never know. You might get lucky. Now I want to bring up how the damage works, or if you're shooting at a tank at a certain place, what's it going to do, potentially. Now, this is all going to talk about if the hits penetrate and actually do damage, not if they ricochet or bounce off. So, there's 4 major modules to the tank. We're going to start off with the tracks, and the tracks control movement. If you destroy the tracks by simply just shooting at them, whether on the top, the sides, back, either way, it'll do damage to the tracks, and unless you're hitting from the side, and even the side isn't always a surefire method of hitting the hull, the tracks will be the only thing that gets damaged, as they're not technically part of the hull. They're connected, but they don't count as the hull. So, by destroying these, you will bring the tank down to a slower pace to where they can only go 1 gear. Now, the next module I want to talk about is the engine, and this goes hand in hand with the hull. 99 times out of 100, when you hit the engine or damage it, you're going to damage the hull at the same time, especially if you're aiming on the back of a tank. Now, when you take out the engine and bring it to 0, the tank will come to a full stop and won't be able to move until the engine is repaired. So, if you're able to take out an engine, you will officially immobilize any vehicle. And that goes for a truck or a tank, but mostly this is with tanks, as most trucks won't live long enough to have their engine disabled. The third module I want to touch on is the turret. Now, when you destroy the turret or bring the health to 0, the turret will turn slower and the machine gun will not be usable on the turret. However, it'll take a couple hits to disable a turret, and it does not affect the hull until the health is 0, meaning you have to hit the turret numerous times to inflict damage to the hull. And unless you're using the AT gun, you're probably going to have more than just a shot at the turret. So keep that in mind when hitting the turret. And the fourth and final module is obviously the hull. This is the main health bar of the tank. Once you bring this to 0, the tank is destroyed. And I've already mentioned earlier in the video how many shots it takes to destroy every vehicle and its whole health bar. So feel free to refer back on the video. Now, just know with everything I've just told you, you're probably not going to be 100% with everything. There's probably going to be some random infantryman that shoots you and gets you before you get in range, or there's a lot of things that don't happen. You're going to have that in battle. That's my little disclaimer at the end of all this. But if you do these right, keep this stuff in mind with all the things I've just mentioned, with the rocket launcher, the AT gun, the satchel and mines, and the anti-tank rifle, I guess, you should do well as an anti-tank gunner, especially with the current state of the game. So go out there and kill some tanks and make me proud.